Canon's line of L lenses are some of the most well-loved and sought-after glass in the world of photography today. Now, at only about $600, the 70-200 f4L is basically the cheapest L lens you'll find. Now, considering it's half the price, if not less than half the price, of just about any other L lens, it really begs the question, is this lens actually up to the standards that makes other L lenses so famous? Or is this really nothing more than a kit lens level product that's been glorified with a red ring? Let's take a look. Now, build quality wise, this lens does not disappoint. This is definitely the metal style construction, which definitely makes it feel a lot stronger and a lot sturdier than other lenses that are cheaper than it. So that's definitely a positive. Another thing I really like about the build style of this lens is when twisting and turning the zoom ring, the lens does not extend or rotate or anything like that. So no matter where you are in the focal range, it will always stay the same, which is actually pretty convenient and pretty nice, because that definitely keeps the weight a lot more balanced, which is very useful, especially when you're working on smaller camera bodies. And the only thing I should point out is this lens is not weather sealed. So this is not a lens I would necessarily bring out in the rain or anything like that. But as you'll see later, that really shouldn't be that much of an issue. Now, autofocus wise, this lens does not disappoint at all. It's fast, silent, and autofocus wise, this is definitely a fantastic performer. But luckily also, this is also a great lens for manual focus. The manual focus ring is very smooth, completely silent, and really a joy to use if you like manual focusing. Now this lens includes the feature of full-time manual focus, so even if the lens is set to autofocus as you see here, you can still manually focus it. So for focus, this is a fantastic lens. And of course this does also have a distance scale, so you can see exactly where you're focusing. Now on to what really matters, and that is the image quality. And thankfully the performance this lens gives is really good. Definitely very impressive, not only by zoom lens standards, but by any lens. I mean, this is definitely a better performer than several of the prime lenses I've used. Now, all the way open at f4, there are some minor imperfections, but unless the people that are looking at these pictures are major pixel peepers, it's really not going to matter. It's pretty passable. But if you stop down even a little bit to around f5.6, that's when the image gets really sharp with no chromatic aberration or anything like that. So what I'd personally recommend doing is leaving this around f5.6, because that way you can get the shallowest depth of field, the most light coming into the camera, and still really have no degradation to the image quality. So, image quality wise, this is an absolute pass. This lens is giving me better performance than some of the prime lenses I've used. It's definitely a very good lens, and like, you don't even need to really inspect it. Like, just on the little camera's LCD screen, you can already see the clarity and the sharpness this lens performs. So this is a great lens for image quality, no doubt. So are there really any major disadvantages to using this lens? Well, a lot of people say that the maximum aperture of f4 is pretty slow, and a lot of people would be more comfortable with something faster than that or whatever, but that's not really a valid argument, and for a few reasons. To start off, just about every single telephoto zoom that's cheaper than this has a variable maximum aperture, where when you zoom in all the way to 200, 210, 250, 300, or whatever the highest focal length may be, the maximum aperture becomes f5.6. So if you think about it, this really is not any slower than any of the lenses that this is cheaper than. So if you're comparing this to prime lenses or something like that, yeah, but compared to other telephoto zooms, f4 is perfectly reasonable maximum aperture. And the other reason why f4 being the maximum aperture really doesn't matter is because you wouldn't want to use this lens at its maximum aperture anyway. This lens just gets so sharp, even stop down a little bit to f5.6, 6.3, 7, whatever, you know, that's just really when this lens performs so well. You really would not want to have it at f4, or even if it went down to f2.8 like some versions of this lens does, or at f1.8 or 1.4, even if it went down to something ridiculous like that, you wouldn't want to use it at those apertures because it really would not be as sharp as it is at f5.6 or whatever, like I said. Now, the question you might have is, what if you need that extra light gathering of a wider aperture? Now, how I see it, this lens is not made to be used in low light situations for several reasons. This lens, the focal range, just everything about it is just designed to be used for outdoor events where it's really sunny, like outdoor concerts, maybe like a street fair, or maybe if you're doing like news, maybe a protest or something like that. It's also great for nature photography, as you've seen some of the sample pictures I've shown. And, it's also great for portraits if you have a lot of portrait lights. This covers, 80 millimeters, 100 millimeters, 90, whatever. This covers a lot of the very popular portrait focal lengths. So this lens just begs to be used in high light level situations. So, this is not the lens I'd want to use in a low light situation like indoors. Not only because of its f4 maximum aperture, but because of its zoom range. I don't want to use a 70-200 lens indoors. That really wouldn't be comfortable. I'd rather use something near 50-35 or something like that. I'd rather use a standard lens or even a slightly wide-angle lens. So the fact that this doesn't go below f4 really doesn't matter because I wouldn't use this lens for those sort of situations anyway. So would I recommend the 70-200 f4L? Well, I shouldn't even need to say it. Of course I recommend it. This is a fantastic lens, and it can be found for anywhere from about $500 used to about $750 new, or really anything in between. So like I said, this is really one of the cheapest L lenses you'll find, and it really is a fantastic lens. So if you can afford it, and you want a telephoto zoom or something for portraits, like I said, or something like that, this is a fantastic lens, and there are really very few better options for a lens like this in the sort of price range. Now, of course, $600 or whatever still really isn't that cheap. Most people can't just spend $600 on a lens unless photography is something they're very serious about. So I'll be comparing this in the next video to the 55-250, which is a much cheaper option, to see if you really need to spend this much to get a great telephoto zoom. So I'll see you in the next video, and thank you very much for watching.